Luke Harper pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the cockpit window, staring at the endless stretch of metal and dust. The starport had once been busy, he imagined, full of ships coming and going, of voices echoing through the hallways, of lights blinking in constant rhythm. Now, it was silent. Too silent. Even the warning lights flickered as if unsure whether they should still shine. Luke had been stranded here for almost a day, and the reality was slowly sinking in. He might die alone in this forgotten place. He ran his fingers through his short brown hair and let out a slow breath. The air inside the cabin smelled faintly of burnt metal and stale oil. His comms were dead. Not a single beep, not a single signal from any nearby ship or station. He had tried every frequency, every backup system, even the emergency distress channels. Nothing. The screen blinked back at him with cold, empty silence. Luke had been on a routine cargo run from Alpha Centauri to the Orion Fringe, carrying supplies for a small mining colony. The job was simple, low risk, and well paid. He had thought he would enjoy a quiet few days in space, maybe even read a book he had been meaning to start. Now he was facing a different reality. He leaned back in his seat and looked at the small pack of rations beside him. 2 days' worth of food, maybe 3 if he rationed carefully. Water was even scarcer. The gravity of the situation pressed on him harder than the hull of the ship. He could survive, maybe, for a little while, but the starport showed no signs of life, no hope of rescue. Luke remembered the first moments after his ship had been pulled off course by a sudden solar storm. The storm had hit hard, interfering with navigation systems, burning out circuits, and sending his small cargo ship spinning. He had fought to regain control, straining every nerve, every skill he had learned during his training. Finally, he had crash-landed at the old starport. The hull had taken damage, the landing gear bent and twisted, but he had survived. That was the first victory, small but meaningful. After checking the ship's minor systems, Luke had ventured out. The starport was immense, a collection of long, wide corridors and docking bays, all covered in dust and shadow. The ceiling was high, and large metal beams groaned softly under the weight of the station. The echo of his own footsteps followed him. Strange and unnerving, bouncing off walls that had not felt human touch for years. He had searched for any signs of life, any functioning terminals, any clue that someone might still be here. All he found were broken crates, a few empty supply bins, and flickering lights that seemed to mock him with their inconsistency. By the second evening, Luke had accepted that he might be completely alone. He had eaten a small portion of his rations, sipped carefully from his water container, and sat in the dim glow of the cockpit screens. He let his mind wander to his family back on Earth, to the smell of his mother's cooking, the sound of his sister laughing at a joke he did not understand, the warm comfort of a life that seemed impossibly far away now. He thought about the stories he had read as a boy, about humans surviving in harsh conditions, against odds that no one else would dare face. He had always admired them, the cleverness, the determination, the refusal to give in. Now he wondered if he had inherited even a fraction of that spirit. The night, or whatever passed for night on this starport, was the hardest. The flickering lights cast shadows that danced across the walls. Every creak of metal, every hum of machinery made him jump. He wrapped his jacket tighter around his shoulders and tried to calm his racing heart. He told himself it was just the building settling, nothing more. But deep down, he knew it could be something else, something waiting, something that had been here before him, or maybe something that would arrive too late to help. Luke decided to explore again, hoping to find a storage room, maybe some functioning systems, or even a hidden escape pod. He moved slowly, stepping carefully over debris and broken panels. His flashlight cut through the dark, illuminating patches of rusted metal and peeling paint. He imagined the people who had once worked here, running from bay to bay, shouting to one another across the corridors. They had left or vanished, leaving him in this heavy silence. In the docking bay, he noticed something odd. Footprints. Not his own, or at least not all his own. They were faint, almost erased by dust, but there was no mistake. Someone, or something, had walked here recently. His heart skipped a beat. Luke crouched, examining the impressions carefully. They were human-sized, and they led deeper into the station. He wanted to follow, but fear held him back. He was alone, without weapons, and he had no idea what he would find. He decided to mark the path with small scraps of metal and paper in case he needed to backtrack. Every sound he made seemed loud, every shadow threatening. The Starport felt alive in its own way, alive with memories of the people who had once called it home. He wondered what had happened to them. Pirates? Corporate abandonment? Or something stranger? Hours passed as Luke explored the smaller corridors and maintenance tunnels. He found broken equipment, old storage lockers, and a control room with half the screens dead. Some panels still hummed, showing faint readings that meant little to him. He pressed buttons, tried switches, and listened as the machinery groaned in response. Nothing significant happened, but the effort gave him a sense of purpose. He reminded himself that even small actions mattered. Survival depended on movement, on thought, on refusing to sit and wait for death to find him. Back in the cockpit, Luke set up a temporary camp with his limited supplies. He ate a small portion of ration bars and drank sparingly from his water container. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and thirst made his tongue heavy and dry. Still, he forced himself to eat and drink just enough to stay functional. He knew that if he gave in to despair, he would make mistakes, and mistakes in a place like this could be fatal. He lay back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts wandered to the future. If no one came for him, what then? He imagined floating in space forever, a ghost in a forgotten starport. He imagined the silence becoming a companion, a cruel friend that would never leave him. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a small spark refused to die. It whispered that he was still human, still clever, still capable. In the quiet, he allowed himself a small smile. He had survived worse situations during his training. He had survived storms, equipment failures, and dangerous cargo missions. He had survived because he refused to give up, because he kept thinking, kept moving, kept hoping. Maybe that hope was foolish. Maybe it was fragile, but it was there, burning quietly, like a candle in a dark room. Luke closed his eyes for a moment and let himself rest. But sleep was uneasy. Every sound, every shadow made him flinch. Yet there was also a strange comfort in being alone. No one would judge him. No one would interfere. No one would make demands. For a brief moment he could exist solely for himself, thinking and planning, observing and learning. The starport, in its emptiness, seemed almost to respond to him. The hum of distant machinery, the faint whir of ventilation, the occasional creak of metal, he imagined it as a rhythm, a heartbeat of a place that had once been full of life. He imagined himself as part of that life again, even for a short time. By the end of the first day, Luke had made small progress. He had found a few functional lights, a limited power source, and a secure corner to rest. He had rationed his food and water, and he had begun to map the starport in his mind. It was a slow, tedious process, but it gave him a sense of control. Control was everything. Without it, he would be lost, not just physically, but mentally. He allowed himself one last glance at the docking bay. Shadows danced across the walls, and for a moment he thought he saw a flicker of movement. His heart raced, and he gripped the armrest tightly. Then the shadows settled. Nothing moved. Perhaps it had been his imagination. Perhaps it had been nothing. But the possibility lingered like a whisper, reminding him that the starport might not be entirely empty. As he lay down, Luke thought about tomorrow. He would explore further, search for resources, and continue to hope. Survival was not just about food and water. It was about thinking, acting, and refusing to surrender. He had done it before. He could do it again. Outside, the starport remained quiet, the cold metal stretching endlessly into darkness. Inside, Luke Harper waited, alert and determined for whatever came next. Alone, but not defeated. Luke woke with a start, the faint hum of the starport echoing through the metal walls. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, feeling the ache in his muscles from sleeping in the cockpit chair. The cold had seeped into his bones, but he ignored it, wrapping his jacket tighter around himself. He checked his small supply of rations and water again. It was the same as before, and the thought of 2 more days without rescue made him uneasy. He decided to explore the starport again. The silence was heavy, pressing down on him with each step he took. The corridors seemed longer this time, shadows stretching in strange shapes, making familiar areas feel unfamiliar. His flashlight cut through the darkness in a narrow beam, illuminating patches of metal floor scratched by unknown hands. Luke noticed something strange near one of the maintenance doors. There were marks on the metal, small scratches that looked fresh. He crouched down, examining them closely. They were not his own. Someone, or something, had been here recently. His heart pounded in his chest. He held his breath and listened. The station was quiet, except for the low hum of power conduits and the occasional groan of the structure. He followed the marks cautiously, moving slowly to avoid making noise. The footprints led him to a storage room. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, he found signs of human activity. Crates had been opened, a few tools scattered on the floor. Dust was disturbed in places. Luke swallowed hard. He was not alone. Someone had been here in the past hours, maybe even minutes. Luke debated what to do next. He could hide, stay quiet, and wait for whoever was here to appear. Or he could try to find them. His curiosity and survival instinct won. He needed to know if this was a threat or help. He stepped into the room slowly, flashlight sweeping across the walls and crates. There was no one there. He checked the crates carefully. Most were empty, but one contained basic survival supplies, water rations, some food bars, and a portable first aid kit. Luke took what he could carry, grateful for the unexpected find. He left the room quietly, feeling slightly less alone. Even if he did not see anyone, the signs of life gave him hope. Someone else had been here. Someone had survived, or maybe still survived. As he moved through the corridors, Luke's mind raced with possibilities. Why was the starport abandoned? Where was everyone? And who had left these supplies? The questions made him uneasy, but they also gave him purpose. He was not just waiting for rescue anymore. He was trying to understand the place, to survive by learning its secrets. He found a control room with several panels still flickering with light. Some screens displayed old readings of docking bays, others showed maps of the starport. Luke tried pressing buttons carefully, hoping to activate some system. After several attempts, a small terminal responded. It displayed a list of docking schedules, though most were outdated. He noted the last known arrival and departure, trying to piece together the starport's recent history. The terminal also showed something else. A signal, weak and irregular, was coming from one of the outer docking bays. Luke frowned. It was not his ship's signal, and it was faint. He could not tell if it was active or just residual energy, but it gave him an idea. Maybe someone was still in the station, maybe not far from where he was. Luke decided to check the outer docking bay. He moved quickly but carefully, his steps echoing softly. When he reached the bay, he saw nothing at first. The space was wide and empty, with shadows stretching under the dim lights. But then, near the far wall, he noticed a flicker of movement. He froze, holding his breath. The flicker moved again, then disappeared behind a stack of crates. Luke approached slowly. He called out softly, "Hello? Is someone there?" His voice sounded strange in the empty space, bouncing off the walls in a hollow echo. There was no answer. He stepped closer to the crates, his flashlight illuminating the metal floor. Nothing. He waited a moment, heart racing. Then he saw it, a small object sliding across the floor, a metallic tool, rolling gently toward him. He picked it up and inspected it. It was a wrench, clean and polished. Someone had left it here recently, not too long ago. Luke's mind worked quickly. Whoever it was had the same goal as him: survival. They had left supplies, left tools, maybe even left a trail to guide him. Luke spent the next few hours moving through the Starport more carefully. He examined rooms he had not explored the day before, looking for anything useful. He found a small storage locker containing emergency blankets, more food, and a portable power unit. He took what he could carry, feeling a growing sense of hope. The Starport, though abandoned, was not empty. There was life here, or at least there had been very recently. As night fell, Luke returned to his makeshift camp in the cockpit. He spread out the new supplies, organizing them carefully. He ate a portion of the food, drank water sparingly, and set up the portable power unit to provide light and heat. The small comforts made him feel more secure, less like a lone survivor in a dead station. He thought about the signs of life he had seen: footprints, tools, supplies. Someone had been here, and that someone might still be here. The thought made his stomach twist with a mix of fear and anticipation. Who were they? Were they friend or foe? He had no way of knowing, but the possibility that he was not alone lifted a weight from his shoulders. The next morning, Luke woke early, determined to explore more. He followed the faint footprints he had seen the day before, moving deeper into the Starport. The corridors grew narrower, the shadows darker. The air felt heavier, and the silence pressed on him like a living thing. Yet he pressed on, driven by curiosity and the desire to survive. In one section of the Starport, he found a small laboratory. Broken equipment and scattered papers covered the floor. Some of the notes were scientific, describing experiments with energy cells and propulsion systems. Luke did not understand all of it, but he recognized the value of the technology. Whoever had worked here had been smart, resourceful, and careful. He felt a strange kinship, imagining the person who had left these things behind, surviving in the same way he was trying to survive now. Luke spent hours mapping the Starport in his mind, noting safe places to rest, rooms that contained useful supplies and possible escape routes. He moved cautiously, aware that someone might still be nearby. Every sound, every shadow made him tense. But he also felt alive in a way he had not felt since the storm hit his ship. The Starport was dangerous, but it was also full of possibilities. By midday, he reached the outer perimeter of the station, a section he had not dared explore before. The floor was littered with debris, panels torn from walls, and wires hanging like vines. Luke paused, scanning the area carefully. He thought he saw movement again, a shadow flitting behind a pile of crates. He froze, listening. Nothing moved. He took a deep breath and called out again, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice echoed, bouncing through the empty space. Still, no answer. He felt a mixture of disappointment and relief. No one appeared to be here yet, but he was closer than ever to discovering the mystery of the Starport. As he explored, Luke discovered more signs of recent activity. Small fires had been used to cook food, footprints showed a clear path through the corridors, and personal items, an empty canister, a blanket, suggested someone had survived here for days. The evidence gave him hope. The Starport was not as dead as it seemed. Someone had been clever, strong, and resourceful. And maybe that person was still alive. Hours passed as Luke moved through the station, his flashlight cutting through darkness, his mind alert for any sign of life. He found a small room with a functioning terminal. The screen flickered to life when he activated it, showing energy readings from the docking bays. One of the bays showed a ship, small, sleek, and active. Someone had landed recently and their ship's systems were online. Luke's pulse quickened. He was not alone. Not anymore. He examined the terminal carefully, trying to understand the readings. The ship had been docked for less than 2 days, and its energy systems were fully operational. Whoever owned it had access to the Starport's facilities and knew how to survive here. Luke realized that he might finally meet the person who had left all the signs he had been following. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. He had spent 2 days alone, struggling to survive, and now someone else was here. Was this person friend or foe? Would they help him or see him as a threat? Luke's mind raced, but he knew he had to be careful. Survival depended on observation, patience, and quick thinking. He moved toward the docking bay where the active ship was located. His steps were slow, careful, making as little noise as possible. Shadows stretched across the walls, and the faint hum of energy systems filled the air. Luke's heart beat faster with each step. He was about to meet someone, finally, a human presence in this lonely starport. When he reached the edge of the docking bay, he paused. The ship was sleek, clean, and clearly maintained. Luke could see signs of recent use. The engine core was warm. Footprints led to and from the entrance, and small items had been left near the ramp. Someone was here, and they had survived. The thought gave him hope, a spark of energy he had not felt since he landed. Luke took a deep breath, preparing to make contact. He stepped forward, calling out in a clear, steady voice. "Hello? Is anyone here? I'm not here to cause trouble, I just need help." He waited, tense, listening for any response. For a moment there was silence. Then a faint sound, a step. Careful and measured, coming from behind the ship. Luke froze. He was not alone. Someone was here, someone alive. And finally, after 2 days of solitude, he might not be alone anymore. Luke's heart thumped loudly in his chest. He stayed frozen at the edge of the docking bay, staring at the sleek ship. The hum of its engine filled the air, vibrating softly through the metal floor beneath him. Every instinct told him to be careful. Every part of him wanted to run, to hide, to wait for whoever was there to make the first move. But his curiosity, stronger than his fear, pushed him forward. "Hello?" he called again, his voice steadier this time. "I'm Luke Harper. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need help." The sound of footsteps answered him. 1, 2, careful, measured steps. They echoed off the high walls of the bay and made him flinch. Then, from behind the ship, a figure emerged. Luke blinked. A woman stepped into the light. She was tall and strong, with short, sandy hair that framed a determined face. Her uniform was clean, with a patch showing the name Claire Mitchell. She held a small device in her hand, scanning the area as she moved. Her eyes were sharp, assessing him quickly, noting every detail. "Who are you?" she asked, voice calm but firm. Luke raised his hands slightly. "I'm Luke Harper. I was stranded here after my ship went off course. I've been trying to survive. I didn't know anyone else was here." Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. She studied him for a long moment. He could feel her judgment, but it was not hostile, just careful. She lowered the device in her hand slightly, but kept it ready. "This is my station," she said. "I came to check on it. Who told you it was abandoned?" "No one," Luke admitted. "I thought it was empty. I didn't see anyone. I tried to call for help, but the comms were dead. I was alone here for 2 days." His voice dropped at the end, almost a whisper. "I didn't know what else to do." Claire studied him carefully. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of fear, exhaustion, but also determination. He had survived 2 days in a place most people would consider impossible. She could see it clearly. "You're lucky," she said finally. "Most people wouldn't last a day here, let alone 2. Luke felt a small surge of pride. I just tried to stay busy, find food, water, shelter, keep moving. I didn't want to give up." Claire nodded slightly, then gestured toward the ship. "You'll need shelter. You look exhausted. Follow me." Luke followed her cautiously, staying close but careful not to touch anything he shouldn't. The ship looked impressive, sleek, and well-maintained. Claire guided him to a small living area she had set up inside the station. It was clean, warm, and safe. A small cot, a table, a supply of food and water. It was simple, but it was everything he needed. "Sit," she said, pointing to the cot. "Eat, drink. You need to regain some strength before we talk more." Luke did as she asked, sitting down and opening a small container of food. He ate slowly, savoring each bite. It had been almost a day since his last proper meal. The warmth and security of the space made him relax slightly. Claire watched him quietly for a moment, then sat across from him at the table. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." Luke nodded. He took a deep breath and began to explain everything. The storm that had knocked his ship off course, the crash landing at the station, the hours spent exploring, the signs of life he had found, the supplies he had discovered, and the fear that had pressed down on him every night. Claire listened carefully, her expression calm but focused. She asked questions occasionally, mostly technical ones about the ship, the damage, and his navigation systems. Luke answered as best he could, grateful for the chance to talk to someone after days of silence. When he finished, there was a long pause. Claire leaned back, her arms crossed. "You survived," she said finally. "That tells me a lot about you. You're smart, resourceful, and persistent. Those are qualities that matter here. Out there in space, you'll need them every day." Luke smiled faintly, feeling a little of the tension in his chest ease. "Thanks," he said quietly. "I didn't know if anyone would ever come." "You weren't expecting me," she said. "But now that I'm here, we need to talk about what's next. This station is not safe. It's been abandoned for a reason. There are threats out here you wouldn't believe. Pirates, smugglers, even worse. People who don't care about human life at all." Luke listened carefully. He had imagined the Starport as empty and silent, a place of safety in the chaos of space. Now he realized it was dangerous, and the signs of life he had found were not necessarily friendly. Claire stood and moved to a control panel. She pressed several buttons, and a holographic map of the Starport appeared, showing docking bays, corridors, and key systems. "I've been checking on this place for weeks," she said. "It's on a remote route, and it's supposed to be unoccupied. But it's strategically important. That means it's a target. I didn't expect anyone to be here." Luke nodded. "I understand. I just wanted to survive. I didn't mean to interfere." "You didn't interfere," she said. "You survived. That counts for a lot. Most people would have panicked, made mistakes. You didn't. You adapted. That's why I'm willing to help you now." Luke felt a mix of relief and curiosity. "Help me how?" he asked. Claire gestured toward the map. "First, we make sure you're safe. Then, we plan. There are systems here that can be restored, supplies that can be used. But we have to be careful. I don't know who might come looking for this station. You're lucky I arrived when I did. If you were alone much longer, you might not have made it." Luke nodded again, feeling both grateful and humbled. "I didn't think anyone would ever find me," he said. "I thought I'd die here." Claire's expression softened slightly. "Nobody should die alone if we can prevent it," she said. "Especially not someone like you." They spent the next few hours working together. Luke showed her the supplies he had found, the places he had explored, and the areas that seemed secure. Claire assessed everything carefully, noting which systems could be repaired, which areas were safe, and which corridors were too dangerous to enter. Luke realized something important. Even though Claire was clearly experienced, she respected his observations. She listened to his ideas, incorporated his findings, and treated him as a partner rather than a subordinate. That gave him confidence. He was not just a survivor anymore. He was someone whose skills mattered. As they worked, Luke began to notice small details about Claire. She moved with purpose, but she was cautious, always scanning the environment for threats. She had a calm confidence that put him at ease. He could tell she was capable, someone who had faced danger before and survived. When they finally paused, Claire leaned back against a wall. "We should rest," she said. "We've been at this for hours. You need sleep, and I need to monitor the station's systems." Luke nodded, feeling the exhaustion in his body. "I will," he said. "Thanks for helping me." Claire smiled faintly. "You would have helped yourself if I weren't here," she said. "Don't forget that. You're strong, smart, resourceful. That's why you're still alive." Luke felt a warmth in his chest at her words. It was strange to feel hope after days of fear and uncertainty. He realized that even in the vast emptiness of space, even in a deserted starport, humans could survive. Not just survive, but adapt, learn, and even help one another. That night, Luke slept in the small living area, feeling safer than he had in 2 days. The hum of the station, the glow of the lights, and the presence of Claire nearby made the starport feel less like a trap and more like a place of possibility. He dreamed of Earth, of his family, but also of the challenges ahead. He knew survival would not be easy, but he also knew that he was not alone anymore. The next morning, they continued their work. Claire showed Luke how to operate some of the station's systems, how to access supply caches, and how to monitor the energy network. Luke learned quickly, his curiosity and determination driving him forward. He realized that even though the station was abandoned, it had potential. Together they could make it a safe place, or at least survive long enough to face whatever came next. By the end of the day, Luke and Claire had mapped most of the station, repaired minor systems, and secured supplies. They had even found a small generator that could provide temporary power to the docking bays. Luke felt a sense of accomplishment. For the first time in 2 days, he felt like he could breathe, like he was in control of his own survival. As they sat together, monitoring the station, Claire spoke quietly. "You know, Luke, humans are amazing," she said. "We survive in places no one else thinks we can. We adapt, we fight, and even when everything seems lost, we find a way." Luke nodded, understanding completely. That was exactly what had kept him alive for the past 2 days. And now, with Claire by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Outside, the starport remained quiet. But inside, Luke Harper and Claire Mitchell prepared for the challenges ahead. They were no longer alone. Together, they could survive. Together, they could turn a deserted starport into a stronghold. And together, they could face the dangers that awaited in the vast emptiness of space. Luke woke early, as usual. Even after sleeping in the small living area with Claire, he felt restless. The quiet hum of the starport usually gave him comfort. But today, it made him uneasy. He glanced at the map Claire had set up, showing the station's corridors, docking bays, and supply rooms. Everything seemed calm, too calm. Claire entered the room, holding a small tablet. "Luke," she said quietly, "we've got incoming." Luke looked up sharply. "Incoming? What do you mean?" She pointed at the screen. Sensors picked up a fleet moving toward the station, small ships, lightly armed but fast. "They're mercenaries. probably looking to take this starport for themselves. Luke felt a chill run down his spine. He had imagined being alone as dangerous, but now the real danger was here. "How many?" he asked, trying to remain calm. "Too many for us to fight head-on," Claire replied, "but we can outsmart them. The station has defenses, and we know it better than they do." Luke nodded, his mind already racing. "What do we do first?" Claire led him to the control panel. "We'll start by securing the docking bays. They'll try to land their ships. We can lock doors, divert power, and set up barriers. I'll handle the systems, but I need you to move quickly through the corridors. Set traps, block doors, anything you can do to slow them down." Luke felt a mix of fear and excitement. He had survived alone, but now he had a purpose beyond just staying alive. He was going to fight, and he would fight smart. "I'm ready," he said. They split up. Claire focused on the systems, rerouting power, and monitoring sensors. Luke moved through the corridors, using his knowledge from the past 2 days to set simple but effective traps. He used loose panels to create obstacles, wires to trip sensors, and small containers to block pathways. Every step was calculated, every action meant to slow down the mercenaries without putting them at a deadly advantage. As Luke worked, he felt a strange thrill. He had always been cautious, but now he was in a situation where his ingenuity mattered. He imagined stories he had read as a boy, of humans surviving against impossible odds, and realized he was living one of those stories now. After a while, Claire's voice came over the station intercom. "Luke, they're approaching the outer bay. Be ready." Luke sprinted to the docking bay, checking every corner as he moved. The lights flickered slightly, shadows stretching across the walls. He paused, listening. A low hum grew louder, the sound of the mercenaries' ships entering the outer perimeter. He peered through a small viewport and saw them, a dozen small ships, fast and heavily armed. They moved in formation, scanning the starport for signs of life. Luke swallowed hard. This was real. This was happening. Claire's voice came again. "They don't know we're here. That's our advantage. Stay sharp." Luke nodded, though she could not see him. He took a deep breath and activated the first set of barriers. Metal gates slid into place, blocking access to the docking ramps. The mercenaries' ships slowed slightly, scanning for openings. Luke moved quickly, triggering a series of traps he had set earlier. Loose panels shifted under the weight of landing equipment. Small explosions of pressurized containers created smoke and confusion, and tripwires activated lights that flashed suddenly. The mercenaries hesitated, unsure of the station's layout. Claire's voice guided him. "Good work, Luke. Keep it up. Divert power to the defensive turrets. I'll monitor their movements." Luke followed her instructions, using the small generator they had repaired to power the turrets. They were basic defenses, but effective enough to force the enemy to be cautious. Every time a mercenary ship tried to land, they faced obstacles, delays, and resistance. The first wave of ships attempted to force a landing. Luke and Claire watched the monitors as small explosions and electrical sparks sent ships skidding across the docking bays. Some were damaged, forced to retreat, while others tried new approaches. Luke's traps and improvisations worked better than he expected. One of the mercenary pilots yelled over the comms, frustration clear in his voice. "The station is booby-trapped! Who's inside?" Luke's heart raced. They didn't know it was humans. They didn't know that one man and one woman were holding them off with nothing but cleverness and the station's systems. Claire's voice was calm but firm. "Luke, they're regrouping. We need to make a move. Draw them into the main corridor. That's where the turrets and obstacles are strongest." Luke nodded, understanding the plan. He moved to the main corridor, using his knowledge of the starport to lead the mercenaries exactly where they wanted him. As the first few ships entered the corridor, turrets fired, sparks flew, and alarms blared. The mercenaries panicked, realizing they had underestimated the station. Luke felt a surge of adrenaline. He had been alone for 2 days, surviving in silence, and now he was part of a coordinated defense. Every step, every trap, every decision mattered. He moved quickly, checking sensors and adjusting barriers as the mercenaries tried different strategies. Claire monitored the systems from the control panel, her eyes sharp, her fingers moving rapidly. She communicated with Luke constantly, giving instructions, warnings, and encouragement. "Left side barrier now," she called. Luke adjusted it just in time, blocking a ship trying to flank them. Hours passed, and the battle continued. The mercenaries were skilled, but they were unprepared for humans who knew the station intimately. Luke's traps slowed them, and Claire's control of the systems forced them into predictable patterns. Slowly, the attackers' advantage faded. Luke noticed something important. The mercenaries relied heavily on technology. They expected the station to be predictable, for systems to fail in standard ways. But humans were unpredictable. He used this to their advantage, moving in ways they did not anticipate, setting traps that a purely mechanical mind would not expect. One mercenary ship tried to rush through the corridor, ignoring the alarms. Luke activated a hidden pressure gate, sending sparks and smoke into the corridor. The ship skidded, collided with a wall, and was forced to retreat. Luke felt a surge of satisfaction. They were learning, adapting, just as humans always did. Claire's voice cut through his thoughts. "Luke, final wave is approaching. Be ready." He nodded, moving to the last set of barriers. The mercenaries' final ships appeared on the monitors, trying to flank from different angles. Luke had prepared for this, setting up the turrets and obstacles in a way that created a funnel. The attackers would be forced into a narrow path, where every move could be countered. As the final ships entered the corridor, Luke triggered the traps. Sparks flew, smoke filled the area, and the turrets fired accurately. The mercenaries were slowed, confused, and frustrated. Luke's heart pounded, but he stayed focused, moving quickly to adjust barriers and check sensors. Claire's voice was calm, guiding him. "They're panicking. Keep pressure on them. Don't give them an opening." Luke moved faster, thinking about every possible scenario. He used the Starport's layout to his advantage, leading the mercenaries into dead ends and forcing them into traps. Slowly, methodically, they were driven back. Finally, the last of the mercenary ships retreated. Sparks and smoke filled the docking bay, alarms blared, but the station remained intact. Luke sank against a wall, exhausted, his chest heaving. Claire joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said. "We did it. They're gone, at least for now." Luke nodded, too tired to speak. He looked around at the docking bay, the smoke curling in the dim lights, and realized something important. They had survived. Together, humans could adapt, fight, and overcome even in situations that seemed impossible. Claire smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you think, Luke. Never forget that. Humans survive when no one else expects it." Luke felt a surge of pride. He had been alone, desperate, and afraid, but he had survived. And now, with Claire by his side, they had defended the station against a real threat. He understood for the first time what humans were capable of. Creativity, courage, and determination could overcome almost anything. As they moved through the station, checking for damage and securing supplies, Luke realized how much he had changed in the past few days. He was no longer just a survivor. He was part of a team, part of a plan, part of a story of human resilience that was bigger than himself. By the end of the day, the station was secure. The docking bays were cleared, systems repaired, and supplies checked. Luke and Claire sat together in the small living area, exhausted but relieved. "Today was a test," Claire said quietly, "and we passed. Humans survive, we adapt, we fight, and we don't give up." Luke nodded, understanding completely. I know. I've seen it, and now I feel it. Outside, the starport was quiet again, the hum of the systems steady. Inside, Luke Harper and Claire Mitchell rested, ready for whatever would come next. They had survived together, proving that even in the vast emptiness of space, humans were capable of facing any challenge. The morning light barely reached the docking bay, filtered through dusty windows and the glow of the station's dim systems. Luke Harper stirred from his sleep, stretching stiff muscles and rubbing his eyes. The events of the previous day still weighed on him. He could still hear the echoes of alarms, the hum of the turrets, the sparks flying from trapped mercenary ships. He had survived. More than that, he had fought and helped defend the station. Claire Mitchell was already awake, moving quietly through the control room. She was checking systems, scanning for any lingering threats. Her calm presence gave Luke a sense of security he hadn't felt in days. He watched her work, admiring the focus and experience she brought to every task. "You're up early," she said without turning. Luke nodded. "Couldn't sleep. Thinking about what comes next." Claire finally looked at him, her expression softening. "There's a lot to think about. But first, we make sure this station is completely secure. Then we can figure out our next move." Luke followed her through the corridors, checking supplies, making sure nothing was damaged. They moved carefully, but there was no sign of the mercenaries. The station was quiet, almost peaceful after the chaos of the previous day. Luke felt a strange sense of pride. They had faced real danger and survived. As they worked, Luke realized how much he had changed. 2 days ago, he had been a stranded cargo pilot, scared and uncertain. Now he felt capable, strong, and alert. He had learned to use the environment to his advantage, think quickly under pressure, and trust his instincts. The experience had taught him the power of human resilience. Claire paused at a terminal, pulling up a map of the station. "We need to plan for the long term," she said. "This station is valuable, and more people will come looking. We can't rely on luck forever. We need to reinforce defenses, create escape plans, and stock supplies. We also need to decide what to do with the station itself." Luke nodded. "I agree. We can make it a stronghold, a place where humans can survive even if others think it's abandoned or lost." Claire smiled faintly. "Exactly. Humans adapt. We survive. We take what seems lost and make it ours. That's why we're here, Luke. That's why you're here." Luke felt a warmth in his chest. Claire's words reminded him of what he had already learned. Humans were clever, resourceful, and persistent. Even when isolated, even when facing overwhelming odds, they found a way. He had lived it. He had seen it. And now, he was ready to embrace it fully. They spent the next several hours reinforcing the station. Luke worked on physical barriers, strengthening doors and adding simple mechanical traps to slow any future intruders. Claire focused on energy systems, monitoring sensors, and programming defensive turrets. Together they moved efficiently, communicating constantly and sharing ideas. Luke found himself enjoying the teamwork. After days of being alone, it was refreshing to collaborate, to have another human understanding and contributing. He realized how much easier survival became when humans worked together, combining brains, courage, and resourcefulness. By midday, they paused for a break. Luke sat on the edge of the cockpit, eating a ration bar and sipping water. Claire joined him, holding a small container of food. "You did well yesterday," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I've seen a lot of people in my time, but few can stay calm and focused like you did. Most panic, most make mistakes. You didn't. You adapted. You survived. That's why we're still here." Luke swallowed, feeling a mix of pride and humility. "I didn't know if I could," he admitted. "I thought I'd be alone forever, trapped here. But I kept trying. I guess I guess humans are stronger than we think. Claire nodded. Stronger than we know. And smarter, too. That's the thing about humans. We use what we have, make the best of it, and keep moving forward. You've proven that. Luke felt a deep sense of connection, not just to Claire, but to humanity itself. He thought about Earth, his family, and all the stories he had heard about human ingenuity and bravery. He realized that he was part of that story now, living it, experiencing it firsthand. As they finished their meal, a faint signal appeared on one of the monitors. Luke and Claire exchanged a glance. The signal was weak but clear enough to identify. It was a small transport ship approaching the station, unarmed and slow-moving. "Looks like someone's coming," Claire said. "Could be a supply run, could be scouts. Either way, we need to be ready." Luke nodded. "We've reinforced everything. We're ready." The ship docked without incident. A man stepped out, tall and lean. Wearing a standard uniform, he raised his hand in greeting. "Claire Mitchell?" he asked. Claire stepped forward. "Yes, who are you?" "I'm Ryan Wells," the man replied. "I'm part of the logistics network for this sector. I received a signal from this station. You've been operating it alone?" Claire nodded. "Not completely alone. I had some help." She gestured to Luke, who stepped forward quietly. Ryan's eyes widened slightly. "Luke Harper? I've heard about you. You survived 2 days here alone and defended the station? That's impressive, very impressive." Luke felt a flush of pride. He had survived, and now someone else recognized it. "I did what I had to do," he said simply. Ryan nodded. "I can see that. You both did well. This station is secure now, and with both of you, it can be a real hub again. I'll bring supplies and reinforcements. You won't be alone anymore." Claire smiled. "That's good news. We've been preparing for this, making sure the station is strong and ready, but your timing is perfect. We've secured everything and are ready for whatever comes next." Luke watched as Ryan moved through the station, checking systems, supplies, and barriers. He realized how much the station had changed in just a few days. What had been a deserted, abandoned place was now organized, fortified, and functional. Humans had made it theirs again. Later, as they rested in the small living area, Luke and Claire reflected on what had happened. "It's strange," Luke said quietly. "I thought I was going to die alone here. 2 days ago, I felt like no one would ever find me. And now it feels like we've accomplished something big." Claire nodded. "That's the power of humans. We survive, we adapt, we fight. And even when we think we're alone, we find a way. You proved that, Luke. You made a difference." Luke felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had been scared, isolated, and uncertain, but he had survived. He had adapted. And now, with Claire and the reinforcements arriving, he felt a part of something larger. They spent the rest of the day preparing for the arrival of Ryan's supplies. Luke checked traps, reinforced doors, and helped organize storage. Claire monitored systems, ensuring that energy, security, and communication networks were stable. Together, they worked efficiently, their combined skills making the station stronger than ever. As evening approached, Luke stood at the edge of the docking bay, watching the stars beyond. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the storm, the crash, the solitude. And he thought about what he had learned. Humans were clever, persistent, and resourceful. They could survive in places no one else could. They could adapt to the impossible. Claire joined him quietly, looking out at the stars. "You've grown in 2 days more than most do in months," she said. "Not just in skill, but in understanding what it means to survive. Humans don't just endure. We overcome. And you've shown that." Luke smiled faintly. "I feel it now. I understand it. Even in a place like this, abandoned and quiet, humans can survive. We can fight, we can win, and we can help each other do it. Claire nodded. Exactly. That's what this station is now. A place where humans survive. A place where we adapt, plan, and face whatever comes next. Together. Luke felt a surge of hope. The station was no longer a symbol of isolation and despair. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and determination. He realized that even in the vast emptiness of space, humans could thrive, even against impossible odds. As night fell, the station glowed softly with lights, hums of machinery, and the quiet energy of life returning. Luke, Claire, and the incoming reinforcements worked together, preparing for a future that was uncertain but full of possibilities. Luke thought about his family, his life on Earth, and everything he had left behind. But he also thought about the story he was now part of, the story of human survival, resilience, and ingenuity. He understood that being alone was not the end. It was a challenge, one that humans were designed to overcome. By the end of the night, the station was secure, functional, and ready. Luke and Claire sat together, exhausted but satisfied. The stars outside twinkled quietly, a reminder of the vast universe they now called home. Luke smiled, finally feeling a sense of peace. He had thought he would die alone in a deserted starport, but now he was alive, strong, and part of something bigger. He had survived. Humans had survived, and together they would face whatever came next. Outside, the starport remained quiet, but inside, life and hope thrived. Luke Harper and Claire Mitchell had proven that humans could survive anything, even in the most abandoned and dangerous corners of space. And in that moment, the station was no longer empty. It was alive, a testament to human courage, ingenuity, and determination.